Hey guys, we are in the studio. It's the Miami Lawyer Daddy podcast, and today we have a very cool guest. That's
CEO and founder.
CEO and founder of a company called Captain Compliance. Welcome, Richard. What's your last name again?
Rudy.
Richart Ruddie. Ruddy or Rudy?
Rudy.
Rudy. Richart Ruddie. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, this is a really interesting new kind of area of law slash regulation compliance. Tell me a little bit about Captain Compliance and what the core business is.
So the core business stems on data privacy and how businesses handle consumers' data. And consumer is considered the key term in the industry's data subject. So you and I are data subjects. And what happens is after Brexit happened, after the 2016 election, the regulators and the public really started to take notice that the way the big tech companies were handling individuals' data really ended up having meaningful impact on real-time events. So what happened then, they realized maybe we need more regulation on how these big tech companies handle our personal data and what they do with it and if it's abused. So where you can think that data was the new oil or gold in the early 2000s. Now it's time to regulate that and just make sure that it's used responsibly, because you would be upset if you were on your phone and somebody was peering over your shoulder and watching every single text message, every single email, and everything you're doing. And that's no different than what's happening online. And when you're on your phone or on your computer, it's just that person is invisibly standing behind you and looking over your phone.
So, is the most basic, easiest to understand version of what's going on and being regulated? Is it it's through websites, right? Is that the most common way that data is collected?
Websites and mobile applications.
Okay, apps and websites.
Apps and websites. Obviously, TikTok is very big in the news right now for certain spying and retargeting technologies.
That's a good one.
There's a reason you go on TikTok and you're like, wow, this is so good. They sell me such relevant content and products that they're pushing me. There's a reason why and how they know that.
So, what's a good example of something that TikTok was doing or allegedly doing that's straight up not allowed?
So TikTok has one of the best algorithms built of all time.
Yeah.
So the model and the initial concept of TikTok was, if I post something on Instagram or another social media channel, there's no guarantee that I'll even get a single view. TikTok guarantees that you'll have at least one view. So they show everything you post to at least one person. Then if that person has good interactions with it and the engagement is high, they show it to another person. And then it starts to feed off of it and can really expand. And that was the initial concept of building the TikTok algorithm. It's obviously expanded now. But what happens is they're seeing what people are looking at. They're seeing what you're searching. When I had my child, I was doing searches on YouTube to find out how to, change diapers, how to put the car seat in the car properly.
Right.
I talked to one of my younger employees after he had his first child, and he said, oh, that's funny, we do all of our searching on TikTok. So that's all data you're feeding into TikTok. So if you're searching for how to put in a car seat, how to fold up a stroller,
right,
how to do a pack and play, they know that you probably have a child or a baby, and they can retarget you with relevant ads.
Right.
The issue with the CCP and the U.S. government is there is allegations that not only is TikTok just really time consuming because their algorithm's so good, that our students, our kids, adults are just so infatuated in spending time on their phones and doing it, not being productive. That's one issue.
Yeah.
The other issue is that they have potential spyware in the app where they can hear what you're saying. So even though 99.9% of individuals may not have an issue with it, maybe that 0.1% that works in the U.S. government or the DOD or some sort of government affairs or relation to it, or maybe the wife of a DOD employee, and they have their pocketbook down at the table during lunch and they're talking about something sensitive. If the CCP or a foreign actor with nefarious intentions hears that could lead to something very, very adverse.
So has there been okay, so breaking it down, because it's pretty important, do we know for sure that on obviously iOS, I'm gonna just do the iPhone because that's what I use and that's what I know. So does iOS allow an app to have access to the microphone? I mean, do we know? We have people obviously the coders have looked through this stuff, and what do we? I know that you have to click like an allow button, right? Do you want Instagram to allow Instagram to have access to your photo reel, right? To see all your photos? Yes, of course I need to say yes because I need to post some photos, right?
Yep.
Allow access to the microphone, yes, because I need to film to post stories, whatever. But what's the like? Is there a clear understanding right now of like, does Instagram and Facebook actually have does iOS allow them to, like, my phone's on right here, I'm in the main screen, okay, I'm
Mhm.
not in any app, I'm just on the open screen, my phone's open. Is it Does iOS allow like these social media apps to have access to the microphone right now for me?
Sure. So the whole idea behind where the data privacy laws are today compared to when GDPR, which is the big one in Europe, first came out, was really geared initially towards big tech. Now it's for all businesses, and that's what's happening here in America. And that's where the consent, where you do get that pop up that says, do you allow the microphone to be turned on this app? Do you allow access to be tracked? All of that comes from the roots of data privacy and software and things that we've built and what we're building on to help businesses stay compliant and just follow the different regulations that come out. So to answer your question is yes, if you're clicking allow, then they can hear. And like if you say to your phone, hey Siri, what's the weather outside?
Yeah.
Right? It's how would it know if you don't
Right.
have your microphone on?
Right. But is that okay? So is that, I would assume if you ask Instagram, right? Like if you ask Zuckerberg, does Instagram listen to me when the app's closed? He would say no. I think he would say no. I don't know. I'm just speculating, but they would, like, permissible uses. Of course, you need the microphone to work while you're posting a story, right?
Yes.
But people would assume, oh, the microphone shouldn't be listening to me while I'm having lunch, right? When my phone's off on the table, the microphone. So do we know? Is that a violation right now? Is there a law? Like, what's the law? Like, what's the law on point for this stuff right now?
And isn't it amazing when you're talking about something and then you go on your phone and say, wait, how what are the
Yeah,
odds, right?
my wife always says that. She's like, I know the phone's listening to me, and I take the other side of it, and I'm always like, well, it's not, doesn't necessarily mean that. It means like you might have been talking about a Disney vacation at lunch, but 10 minutes before lunch, you might have Googled something about Disney, and then that might be the reason that it popped up. So I'm always like a little bit skeptical of just assuming anything in any direction, but that's just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, yeah, so what is the current law that dictates what it can be? Like, there's some things that you can't agree to, right? You can't agree to, having all your calls recorded, probably. Like, there's
Well,
some things that
you can, but you're
okay.
supposed to gain consent. And that's the idea behind what we built. So small, medium-sized businesses and enterprises now are all having to deal with the implications of data and how to use it responsibly. And that's what we built at Captain Compliance, is to help businesses deal with these different data privacy frameworks. So if you count the states and countries, there's over 100 different privacy regulations that you have to deal with. And it's nearly impossible for any one individual to even comprehend or deal with it because it's so complex and it's continuously changing. California, while they have a very well-known state privacy law in the California Consumer Privacy Act, the acronym is CCPA, and then they also have an amended version called CPRA, which came out in July of 2023. And then on top of that, there's also some of these older laws. So one's called California Invasion of Privacy Act. So it does exactly like it says, right? You don't want people invading your privacy.
Right.
It was created in a time more so when people invading your privacy, not digitally, but in the real world. Now it's morphed into what we have today. And then there's also one called the VPPA, which is about video and video reels playing. And that actually stemmed from a judge in California who was renting videos, and he didn't want his public rental information out there. And that became a whole case, and then it had a Streisand effect, and everybody started to learn about it.
Okay.
And essentially what the CIPA, it gives individuals a private right of action, or plaintiffs can now go out and they can file claims for invasion of privacy.
Right.
And that's driving a lot of the market. So business owners, not just in California, but anywhere in the country. So if I'm a California resident and I visit a website that's located here in South Florida, and they have, say, a Metapixel, which is the Facebook tracker, and then I go to a different website, and then I go to Facebook and I see a relevant ad, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, how did it follow me? Just like your wife talking about the Disney example
Right.
at lunch, right? So if it's following me around, all of a sudden you could make a claim that they invaded your privacy if you didn't give them consent to allow the tracking. So we provided different tools to both disclose, because disclosure is really important. You're supposed to let people know when you want to spy on them or you want to retarget them. And then getting their consent is the other kind of factor that we help with our software.
And so the most simplest version of that is like when you visit a website for the first time and it pops up on the bottom, you know, I've never even really looked at it. I'm sure most people haven't, but it says, you know, we use cookies to track. I don't even know. Like, what does it say? What's the most common? And so that is basically, in a nutshell, that's like the tip of the iceberg for what Captain Compliance would do, something like that.
That's the tip of the iceberg. Well, that's the most visible front end, right? You take care of the front of the house before you take care of the back of the house. But what's really important is what the banner actually does, and the functionality and what's happening beneath the layers and the behind the scenes. So what we do is we build a proprietary scanner where we can scan any website or web app, and then we can see all the different tracking technologies, pixels, and cookies that are there. We classify everything in what's called first party and third party data. So the first party would be first party trackers would be from your actual website. So MiamiLawyerDaddy.com would have first party. If you had TikTok, Facebook, if you had Google Analytics, anything like that, we may classify that as what's called third party. So if you have a TikTok ad pixel that's going to retarget people, that would be considered what's called a targeting pixel or targeting cookie, because it's advertising or targeting you. If you have something that is a checkout, say Stripe.com or Authorize.net to process credit card payments, that's not considered targeting, but that's more of a functionality, or it might be considered strictly necessary depending on the use case and the necessity of it for the website and which cookies we're talking about. So all the cookies have different classifications, and based on those classifications, when you go to a website and you want to turn off a targeting cookie, you have the ability now with the consent banners. And that's what's important, that you have the ability to turn off and have disclosure from the business, because if you don't, then it's taking away your rights as a data subject. And that's where a lot of these problems and lawsuits are stemming from. So like I said, the SEPA ones in California are coming from more of the plaintiff side. But on the other end, if you're a data subject and you go to a website and they're doing something nefarious and you're in a state with a privacy law, you can then lodge a formal complaint, and the business can be fined anywhere from, say, $2,500 on the low end to $7,500 per complaint. Obviously, on the lawsuit and litigation side, the numbers we're seeing, I mean, we have a client we're in talks with right now that has almost a $20 million settlement they had to pay out for a violation. So it can get really big. And then when you
would that be from a class action case that was brought against them?
That's from a class action, essentially, for doing things that were considered nefarious and weren't giving the data subjects the consent that they were supposed to receive. So it gets real expensive real fast. And then, for us, where our prices are nowhere near that, it's really a great solution, because we're building trust with the business owners and their clients, and we're saving them money. So it's a win-win, and it's just good hygiene to have good compliance.
Yeah, no, it's very, very, it's in the modern world. Tell me, how did you guys get started? Like, what's the backstory of how the company got started?
Yeah, so I actually come from the digital marketing world. So I was on the other side of it, and seeing that
you were the tracking people.
I was the tracking people, and I was looking at different ideas as I was looking towards a potential exit with my last agency. And as I saw that things were morphing and changing, I was looking at everything from like data compilers, like a Zoom Info as one of my ideas. And I came across the data privacy B2B world. So in my last business, one of the offerings we had was data privacy removal. So if you were to type in your name plus Miami, Florida, and you said, all my personal information is here online, and it says exactly where I live, it has my wife's address, it's got my family's address, the relatives, emails, all this, and this is kind of creepy. So we would go ahead and we would remove that personal information for people. And then I started seeing that there was this whole world sprouting up for business to business services for data privacy compliance. And that's kind of when the light bulb went off in my head, and I said, okay, let me learn more about this whole industry. And that's when I joined the International Association of Privacy Professionals, which is really an amazing organization with thousands of members. Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, spoke at one of the recent conferences in DC. You had the president of Microsoft. So you have really big names there. And then you have really just small business owners too now getting involved. And that's when I started seeing more consent banners, more headline fines about privacy violations, and realize, okay, maybe if I'm going to move with the tides, and being a digital marketer, we always had to morph and navigate the waters for different things that were happening. This is what I saw as like the next iteration in the digital marketing world, and just following good hygiene for privacy as a great growing business that even now we're still in spring training of an extra innings baseball game.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And so you were always in the marketing world before you came to the compliance side of things?
Always in the marketing world. In a past life, I worked at a hedge fund out of college.
Okay.
And while I was paying my dues there, I was learning how to do SEO and search engine marketing. And that's kind of what started my journey in 2008. And then just slowly started to expand and refine my marketing efforts, built what was the largest ORM agency in the country, and then have morphed into data privacy, which is the next big goal.
So within the Captain Compliance business model, is there specific like services or tiers? How does it work? Like, where are you guys at? You're still pretty early in the?
We're still fairly early, but we have over 100 clients.
Okay.
Actually using our software. We have millions of impressions every single day of people interacting with our consent banners. Mm-hmm. So we're still early, but we have a suite of different tools. So the main being the cookie scanner that I mentioned, as well as the consent banner. So consent obviously being the most front facing of the two. And then there's also something called a data subject access request. So you as an individual, like the example I spoke about where it had your personal information all over the internet,
right,
you can actually go and lodge a formal request. And you can even try this with big tech companies like Facebook and say, what information do you have about me? And by law, they have to respond back and say, here's all the information. Now, you might be surprised when you get 2,000 pages of data from Facebook and be like, wow, this is how they know more about me than I do.
What do you have to give them in order for the request? Like full name, date of birth? Like what do you give them? Just that?
So depending on the company, and we deal with, like I said, we have hundreds of clients, but they all have different requests in terms of the level of data they want to verify to make sure that you are who you are when you're making the request, because there could again be nefarious actors going out, right, going through and saying, hey, I'm you, making up a fake ID and then making a request to get your information. So there are bad actors who have done things like that. So depending on the business, they may want to have more of a requirement. So Chewy.com, for example, a pet food company, right? If you're logged in and you're making a request and you want to find out what pet food I've ordered in the last year, like they supply that to you. They don't do a big two-factor authentication or anything like verifying your facial, recognition or things like that.
Right. So, like, what's the law called that? There's a law that mandates the disclosure, right? Like, what's that? Does it have a name or a funny name like laws do?
So it's within the different privacy frameworks.
Okay.
So, for example, in Europe, you have GDPR, right? So in GDPR, one of the requirements is data subject access requests, which is what we just talked about. California also has it. So if you're a California resident, I've actually run a test as a Florida resident making a data subject request with a California company. And after 29 days, they replied back and said, you're not a California resident. We're actually not going to supply this, which I thought was interesting because I've done it with other businesses, and not being a California resident, where Florida is adhering more to companies with revenues over $1 billion, and they've come back and actually supplied the information. So again, it's building trust. Needless to say, I'm not a buyer of that company's products anymore that didn't supply it.
Right. So if I were to send a request to Meta, Facebook, what do I have to what law do I cite?
Yeah, so
a Florida law or a federal law or both?
So there is no federal law. They've been talking since 2012 trying to create a federal law, and right after the big privacy summit in April of last year, there was talks that they were finally going to get a federal privacy law. And this is after hundreds of big name lawyers from everybody from the government to Netflix attorneys to Meta attorneys that were there to just people that are in the privacy world said, we're never going to get it. Literally
Yeah.
2 days after the conference, they said, okay, we're working on a federal privacy law.
Okay.
Needless to say, it ended up not coming through.
So for
and
right now, it's only state by state.
State by state,
Okay.
and even California came out and said, even if we have a federal privacy law, we're still going to adhere to our state privacy law, which is very stringent and is closest
Okay.
in comparison to GDPR in Europe.
So if I were to make my request now as a Florida resident, I would have to make it I would have to cite a Florida law.
So you don't even have to cite Florida law. Facebook or Meta, as good privacy practices, allows any data subject to go ahead and make their request. So we can do a whole podcast and show.
Yeah, no,
afterwards
I might
on
actually
this.
do it. I'm just really curious. So what's the actual, like, I just log into my Facebook account and somewhere in the settings, there's like an option for request my, like, what information do you have on me, right? What's it called?
It's data subject requester.
Data subject request.
Yeah. So we'll do a whole show because it's probably going to be a lot of data, and you'll be.
And what kind of
shocked.
stuff do they have?
Everything from when you've logged in, your name, your preferences, pages that you've liked, interests, things you looked at.
Does it have like will they give you their conclusions about you? Like I like, you know what I mean? Like,
so you want a cliff notes of
guys,
everything
like,
that Meta
interest,
knows.
like they know I like the Rolex page, right?
Yeah.
But do they have like a separate area, like, likes expensive watches, likes basketball, has 2 little kids? Do they give you that, or is it like kind of like they are careful?
We'll go through. We'll print one out.
Yeah,
that'll be
I
a
wanna
fun
do one.
exercise on a follow-up privacy.
Very cool.
Because
Very cool.
some people don't realize that Facebook gives you that right, and a lot of people don't even know that businesses are starting to be required. And again, that's why Captain Compliance is so important, because we're giving business owners the ability to track down and get their information in a clear and concise way to their clients for when they ask. Because if they don't, all of a sudden, all you need is a couple savvy attorneys or plaintiffs and say, hey,
that was my next question.
Go, and as an attorney, right? Go to these sites, and there's services already starting to pop up. Submit all these requests, and if they don't reply, let us know, and we're gonna start knocking them out. Yep.
Yeah.
So we're in talks with a handful of one-to-many kind of approach clients who say we need this. We're seeing a lot of litigation in the space, and your product solves it. And our idea is, like, we want to simplify privacy. Privacy is very complex.
Yeah.
You wouldn't become a lawyer overnight in a brand new subject, right?
Right.
If you're a PI, you're not going to all of a sudden know how to deal with immigration, front to back. And we wouldn't expect our clients to either, right? Their job is to run and handle their business. Even CISOs and CTOs and CIOs we deal with have an understanding of privacy, but they're not necessarily privacy experts. So we want to take that guesswork away from them. We want to handle the work. We're able to build our products with dynamic updates, meaning as there's new privacy laws, like last month there was 5 new privacy laws just in the beginning of the month.
Wow.
And it was difficult for businesses to say, hey, what do we have to do now? So what we're able to do is we can actually push dynamic updates to our software and make it so not only are we simplifying privacy for them, but we're also able to automate the process. So they don't have to hire, high dollar privacy attorneys, because they're not cheap. Trust me, I know. And they don't have to deal with the headache of all these different privacy nuances. So that's the idea behind Captain Compliance, is making things simple, easy, and automating the requirements so they can focus on their business and we can focus on protecting them.
Do you guys actually handle the data requests for any of the clients, or does it have to be separate for other reasons?
So we have a few clients now we've set up automated DSARs, is what we call them. And what it is some are getting thousands of requests every single month of people saying, hey, here's my information, delete me from your database.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, if they had to hire a team to go in and fill each of those out and process them, would take hundreds of hours and cost them a lot of money.
Yeah.
We've built end-to-end automation. So it ties in through APIs and other webhooks that we built for the clients, and it ties in with their system. And every time a DSAR comes in, say thousands a month, it's automatically doing the whole processing and deletion for them.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. So
That's
anytime
really
you can save a
useful.
client time, right?
Right.
Which time is money, right? So we're saving them time, we're saving them money, and we're protecting them. So it's a win-win for everybody in what we've built and how we're helping clients.
So companies are basically right now the way it's working is companies are seeing big losses in terms of lawsuits, and then they're realizing we need a solution, and then they can spend a fraction, instead of spending the money to settle the lawsuits, they can just spend it on compliance, and then the lawsuits go away, and then everyone wins.
Yep. I had somebody came to me the other day and said, I got hit with this suit. They want to take us to arbitration. They're asking for $30,000.
Yeah.
I have to now hire an attorney. I then have to pay the arbitration fee. He said, "Oh my God!" He said, "I have to pay $3,500 just to go to arbitration. What if I lose?" I said, "Well, if you lose, you're gonna have to pay also."
Right.
So all of a sudden, he's adding up all the money and said, "Wow, for a nominal cost for what your software is, I could have really saved on all these headaches." So we're trying to help more people, but sometimes people are more reactive than being proactive because they're getting sued. But now, because so many people have been sued and they've settled and it's cost them thousands. I mean, I was talking with a privacy attorney the other day with a very well-known New York law firm. And he said, we have some clients that are settling for money in the thousands.
Yeah.
He said, but I also have one right now, and they think they have a really good case. They don't even want to settle the plaintiff side, and they're asking for millions of dollars. So
For one claim?
For one claim.
For like a single plaintiff?
For a single plaintiff, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that would be catastrophic.
Catastrophic.
It's a big company.
Yeah. So you can imagine to spend, a few $1,000s a year with a software like ours, eliminate that risk. So, but some people like to learn the hard way, and they're reactive. And some are proactive.
If they think they don't need it, then they'll find out soon enough once they pay. So is there any kind of legal / insurance component of Captain Compliance yet, like in-house attorneys, or is there insurance policies that come with it, or is that further down the road?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a team of privacy experts and privacy attorneys that are advisors that we work with.
Right.
We have the former chief privacy officer from one of the biggest companies down here in South Florida, Chewy.com, who worked with us. We have an amazing adaptive privacy policy software. So I can say that with confidence that you could spend a few $100,000s with big name law firms putting together the sort of privacy policy generator that we built.
Mm-hmm.
And we built that now, and for a very, again, nominal cost, we were able to build out a privacy policy and privacy notice that completely protects you against all your data privacy ingestion practices. And then we are also able to, if the client wants, to dynamically update that privacy notice for them as new laws come out. So that's huge, having kind of these privacy experts on our side and helping and advising. And then I tell clients, I personally would gladly take any risk of clients using our software and using it with the requirements that we put in place, that I'm glad to guarantee back any issue or fine that they would have as a result of non-compliance.
Interesting. So as far as the claims handling process, I guess it's kind of a multi-part situation. What insurance, is it covered by insurance? And if yes, if not, like let's say, I'm just going to pick Target, right? Like the Target website, whatever. I don't even know how they work or anything. But if someone sues Target right now, do they have an insurance policy that covers data collection and privacy invasion, or do they have to handle it? Like, how does that work generally?
Yeah, so cybersecurity insurance is a huge growing field. It was in its nascent stage if we go back 10, 11 years ago. Now it's become obviously a booming industry, right? Because we have a lot of threat actors that do breaches, and then what happens, they do data exfiltration, where they're taking out your data from Target, right? And Target's had some breaches that cost them a lot of money.
Okay.
And they ended up having to make claims to handle it. But yeah, if you are a business like Target.com and you have a data breach, then they'll go out and they'll make a claim if there is an actor that locks up their system and holds them in what's called a ransomware. And ransomware is where they take all your systems, they lock you out, and they say,
when you pay, they'll give you access.
Send me this lovely little technology called Bitcoin you might have heard of. Exactly.
Yeah. So then is it all under the same umbrella of cybersecurity then, or is data invasion of privacy separate, or is it still too early to kind of like, is it all lumped together?
It's fragmented. It's amazing how many different seats in an organization we've come across that own privacy. And that's typically the question we'll deal with. Now, we deal with a lot of SMBs, and we found that none of them have chief privacy officers, and frankly, most of them probably shouldn't. Yeah. Because it's a very intricate position. So a lot of the times, we'll deal with marketing. We'll deal sometimes with the founder and CEO. A bigger organization, we might be dealing with the CIO, a CISO. It depends on the situation. A bigger company, we'll have ones with thousands of employees and typically operations in multiple jurisdictions. We'll have a chief privacy officer, and that's really the person or the designation that deals with privacy the most at a big organization. But again, it depends. We were rolling with a big engineering firm the other day, and they said that it's owned by legal. But we were talking to the CTO, and then the CTO saw our software, was completely blown away by it, said we absolutely need this. They had ADA compliance on their site, which is another whole niche that we don't offer. But that's another thing that's really brought awareness to the industry, that if you don't do proper hygiene, that you can be subject to fines and litigation.
It's very similar in the sense it's just a different law that regulates it. But like if your website can't be viewed by colorblind people or blind people, you could be subject to being fined too there.
Exactly. And it's amazing that so many people have made their sites ADA compliant, but they haven't made their site compliant for data privacy laws yet. And that creates an amazing opportunity for us. And the other amazing thing is when you think about how many people come to your website that have a disability, right? The ADA bucket is a lot smaller because everybody who comes to your website is a data subject.
Yes. So it basically applies to every single visitor, because if you are not in compliance, then everybody you collect data on could sue you and win.
Exactly.
So super interesting. What's next on the horizon for the company? Or working on some big new clients or conferences? What are you guys up to?
Yeah, there's actually a cyber insurance conference coming up next week.
Okay.
Big fan of it. It's called Net Diligence. They really put on an amazing event. There's multiple shows they do a year.
Down here?
Main one is in Philadelphia. The one here is in Miami Beach.
Okay.
So that's really a great event, connecting with other people in the cyber insurance world and the cybersecurity world, connecting with other CISOs that attend. A lot of attorneys end up attending as well.
Okay.
So that's definitely an event that we like to attend and just network and talk shop with people. We just love talking privacy.
And what's the makeup of the company in terms of like shareholders, and have you guys raised money, or like what do you guys, if you're talking about it, if you're not, where are you guys at with that?
Yeah, so we've been bootstrapping to date. Money from previous exits from us. We've done some small friends and family, and we're working on a small seed round now, but we're becoming very self-sufficient.
Nice.
And we find that because of the need for privacy, there's definitely a lot of demand, and we've only been in market for a short period of time, but we're seeing such huge demand. And as we build out a suite of products, which we know other companies that raised 71 million, and they have essentially the same sort of tooling that we've built in a much shorter period of time and for a lot less capital. So
nice.
That's always kind of been my motive, to be very efficient. And but now we're looking to kind of ramp things up, that we have a flywheel and kind of set with bringing leads, bringing on clients. So the idea is to really start hitting the gas this year, and then just expand even more beyond the hundreds of clients that we already have in the millions.
When was the company founded?
Founded in 2023.
Okay.
So the initial development was development of product outline, roadmap, doing things like that. We have both onshore developers and we have nearshore developers. We also have a full-time chief privacy officer, chief trust officer, CRO. So we're still small, but very nimble.
Is most of the staff in the American staff, are they in Florida, or are they spread out?
We're all decentralized. I find when you're trying to build a team of all stars and A players, or what I call is level 3 employees that go above and beyond the call of duty, it's hard to find them and round them up all in one geolocation.
Yeah.
And that's
decentralized is really cool. It's another topic that we could talk about for days. I'm big into that too. I've been that way for a while in my law firm. So it's very cool. Any parting ideas before we go? Well, I think we're gonna have to do another few segments because there's a lot of stuff to break down. I want to do that. What DSAR? What do you call it?
DSAR. That'll be fun. We'll go through and we'll actually go through
data subject
access request.
DSAR. Data subject action. We gotta do that. What they send you, like a disk or a download link? How do they do it?
They send you an AOL disk in the mail. It says, get
the insurance companies still send me disks sometimes. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
And sometimes that might be a privacy or security reason. So
you're right. So for sure. So,
Again, right, it's all about privacy and securing your data, making sure that bad actors are not getting it, or just they're not sharing it with people without your permission. HIPAA, you've heard about, obviously,
yeah.
is all about that. For children now, there's something called COPA, there's FERPA, there's all these different privacy laws, and the industry loves acronyms. And
Yeah.
just about anything you can think of, there'll be some sort of protection or an
Doge.
acronym. Doge, yes.
Anyway, so thank you so much for coming by today. I'm really interested in hearing more about the company. It sounds like you guys are doing great things, and we'll get that DSOR, and we'll
We'll do a
film
run
another
too.
segment soon. Thanks for coming by. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you for having me.